Hello, fifth graders. I hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. Today is June 24th, and we are going to continue with looking at fractions. Okay? This is our last week of summer school, so we're just going to have math today and tomorrow, and that will be it. You'll have a little bit of a break after this until we start up school. Now, we are going to continue to look at fractions. Okay, so we're focusing on finding equivalent fractions, and we did a lot of that last week. And we're going to look at comparing fractions and noticing the relationship between numerators and denominators when you compare fractions. All right, so because it's been a while, maybe you forgot the things I asked you to do. So after you watch this video, there will be an assignment for you to do. So you would be looking for summer school, 5th grade math, June 24th. Okay, it'll be set up the same way that it normally is in the Success Maker program. After you finish that, we'll have a Zoom meeting at 11 o'clock. And in that Zoom meeting at 11 o'clock, if you run into any trouble in the problems that you work on, write the problem down, or write the number of the problem down so that we can go back and take a look at that and I can help you out. We'll also go over some other problems so you get some more practice, you get a chance to talk to the people in the class, and maybe you'll learn something from me, or maybe you'll learn something from one of your classmates, or maybe you'll say something that we learned from. Okay, so again, it's important to attend those meetings. It's part of being in class, especially when we're working from home like we are. All right? So what I want to look at today is comparing some fractions, and I want to use a number line to do that. Okay? So let's imagine that I'm trying to compare these two fractions down here, 2/4 and 2/3. What I want you to notice is that both of the fractions have the same numerator. In 2/4 and 2/3, the numerator of both numbers is 2. It's the denominator that's different. So if I want to compare these two fractions, one way to do that, again, would be to draw them on a number line. I do have to make sure that when I draw these number lines, the length of the overall number line is the same. You know what I mean? I need this line to be as long as this line. If you have a long line and a short line and try to use them to compare fractions, that's not going to work. Okay? Because the idea behind fractions is you're splitting up the same size thing. If the actual thing that you're splitting up is different, it kind of throws everything off. Okay? So to make fourths, I drew my number line and I split it up into 4 sections. What makes fourths easy is if you want to make fourths, you just split it in half, because 1/2 equals 2/4. And then you split between 0 and 2/4 right in the middle, and you'll get 1/4. And then right in between 2/4 and the end of the number line will be 3/4. Okay, so there's my fourths. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. There's my number line that shows fourths. Down here I have thirds. Okay, now that's a little bit more tricky. You kind of got to eyeball it, but I'm trying to split it up into 3 equal sections. So I want this space, and this space, and this space to be about the same. And I can kind of use my hand there to do that, but maybe you use your finger to kind of make sure your sections are the same size. Okay, so now that I've done that, I can just look and see if I want to compare fourths and thirds, or a particular fraction on each number line. I can just look and see where they are. So where is 3/4? 3/4 is, I'm sorry, not 3/4, 2/4 is right here. Let's put a little mark on it. And then here is 2/3. Now when I look at those two, here's 2/4, here's 2/3. Which one looks like they're closer to the right side? Which would be 1. Which of them looks like it's further over? Well, I can see my 2/3 is further than my 2/4. So I could say that 2/3 is definitely the larger between these two. Let's take a look. So right here, it's kind of like an angry alligator, or a greedy, hungry alligator that always bites the bigger one. 2/4 is less than 2/3. Now, here's what throws people off in math and fractions. Sometimes when you see bigger numbers, you assume it has to be a bigger quantity, right? But that's not exactly how it works. So fourths and thirds are different. Fourths are actually smaller than thirds. Why do you think that would happen? So I ask you to picture something. Picture you and your family members are sharing a bag of candy. All right? Got a bag of candy. And if there's 4 of you, you're going to get a little bit less than if there's only 3 of you, right? The way sharing works is the more people you have sharing, the less of a piece that you're going to get, right? So you can imagine you got your bag of candy and you've got 4 people. That's an extra person, right? They're going to have to get candy, so that means everybody else gets a little bit less. Fourths are actually smaller than thirds. So even though 4 is a bigger number, 2/4 is smaller than 2/3 because thirds are bigger than fourths. Okay? Let's do another example. Let's say instead, I want to compare 1/4 and 1/3. Okay, and I'm trying to decide which one is greater. All right, now I already have the number lines down and I explained how I drew those, so I'm just going to find them. I've got 1/4 here and 1/3 here. Now this one is a little bit closer, but if you look, which one of these is further toward the 1, to the right side of the number line? I can see that the thirds are just a little bit further than the fourths. Okay? So that comes back to the same idea. Thirds are a little bit bigger than fourths. Okay? So I'd have to say that 1/4 is less than 1/3. Now this brings me to a little rule that you can make about comparing fractions. And that rule is, if the numerator is the same, the fraction with the smaller number and the denominator is greater. Okay? Because the smaller the number or denominator is, the bigger section it is. Let's think about that for a second to kind of expand that rule. Halves is, if you're going to do a fraction, that's about the biggest you're going to get. So imagine that same bag of candy and it's just you and one other person that are sharing it, right? You're going to split it right down the middle, you each get some, right? So you each get 1/2. Now imagine there's 8 people, 8 people sharing. You're going to get 1/8 of that bag. Now imagine if there's 8 people sharing that same bag of candy, how much candy are you going to get? You're not going to get that much, right? 8 different piles they have to break that into. That means all of those 8 piles are all the same, but they're all small compared to a half size pile. 1/8 would be much smaller than 1/2. So it's bringing me back to the rule that I'm telling you. If the numerator is the same in 1/2 and 1/8, if the numerator is the same, whichever fraction is that has a denominator that's smaller is actually the bigger fraction. And again, it's the idea of sharing and splitting something up. A smaller number in the denominator means a bigger piece. All right? And sometimes people like to think about pizza. Well, I like pizza, so I imagine pizza cut into different slices. If you take a pizza and just take half of it, can you imagine eating half a pizza? That's much different than if they cut it into like 8 slices or 10 slices. You get 1/8 or 1/10, you get one little sliver compared to a bigger fraction that might be half of it. Okay? So when you are looking at fractions and comparing fractions, definitely the number line is helpful for comparing fractions, as long as keeping some rules like I'm sharing with you in mind. The idea that if the numerator is the same, the fraction with the smaller number denominator is actually greater. Okay? So remember, after you get done this, you have some problems to do in Success Maker. Again, summer school, 5th grade math, June 24th. And then I want to see you at our Zoom meeting at 11 o'clock so that I can go over any kind of problems that you might have a difficulty with. Again, if you have trouble on one of your assignments, try to write that number down so that you can share it with me and we can go over it and help you out with it, all right? If not, we'll go over some of my problems and other things too, okay? So I hope that you have yourself a fantastic day, and I hope to see you at 11 o'clock at our Zoom meeting.